What's the most awkward situation you've ever been in with a stranger? I worked security at an aquatic theme park and was watching Jeopardy in the employee entrance. One of the veterinarians came through and watched it with me for a bit. He said he watches it religiously and he'd passed the test for the show and was hoping to get selected. He'd heard that they like to have a diverse group of contestants and they hadn't had a black guy for a while, so he liked his chances. A few days later, there are 2 black contestants, so when I see him leaving the next time I say, "Hey, did you catch Jeopardy last week?" "No, why?" he responds. "There were 2 black guys on it," I explain. He just stares at me blankly for a few seconds and walks off. That's when I realized it was a different gentleman than I had the previous conversation with. Got on an elevator with a woman and she had on these really nice boots, so I complimented them by saying nice boots. She cups her breasts and says, "Well, you're not shy. Thank you, they're real," and then immediately realized I said booties. She thought I said nice boobs. Longest elevator ride ever. To this day, whenever I say boots in any context I do so with a very hard deliberate T. For the record, I did say, "Well, those are nice too" in my head. Oh god, I had some guy in line tell me nice boots once, and I glared at him and said, "Thanks." A minute later, as he's ringing out beside me in the self-checkout, he says, "Ma'am, I think you might have misheard me and thought I said something inappropriate. I just like your footwear is all." I started laughing and we were both so relieved. Lol. The most awkward moment of my life thus far was with a stranger. I was in Quebec airport going through customs with my family. Because of some recent changes to their system, they didn't have everyone in a line, but instead in a large pen, where they would release 50 people at a time. Chaos. When my family is at the front, they release us and everyone is running forward in a mass trying to get to the kiosks. Next to me is a tall Swedish man trying to get his family a kiosk. He is running forward and waving his arm behind him in a come on motion, clearly frantic. Well, somehow the worlds aligned where his middle and pointed finger went perfectly into my 2 nose holes. Perfectly, as he then ripped his arm upwards to motion his family forward. My nose was also ripped forward and I immediately began bleeding everywhere. He looked at me in horror. My family looked at me in frustration as we needed to get to a kiosk. The customs agents looked at me in bewilderment. The language barriers made the situation all the more awkward. Edit. Wow. You all really seem to love my misadventures, hahaha. If you all thought this was funny, you'd be dying at the first time I had to give a drug test for work. Real talk. Never flail your arm without looking. Woman at a gas station didn't know how to put air in her tires, so I helped her because I wanted to put air in my tires and didn't want to wait all day to do it. She called her husband on speakerphone to let him know she found some nice man to help her air her tires. Then I hear him call her an idiot and say that I'm only helping her because I want to fuck her, and where does she get off talking to other men? She stammered and tried to explain that nothing was going on between us. After she got off the phone, she looked at me as if her husband just caught her fucking me and got in her car and left. No thank you, no nothing. And for some reason I felt guilty for even helping her out. Jesus, I feel awkward just thinking about it. I had a boyfriend like that for 3 years. Driving down the street, my gaze pauses on a homeless man on the corner. Him, you're fucking him, I can tell. Edit. First, let me tell you all how much you've done for me today. I've been carrying around this guilt for so long and nobody has ever been able to touch it. Few have really even tried. Even though I know I made the right decision, I never really thought others would see it that way. I can't thank you enough, and I've never needed it more than right now. Second, thank you for the gold, kind stranger. Third, another thing I've never told anyone is the person who helped me see that there was another way to protect the baby was none other than Dr. George Tiller, the murdered abortion doctor. I ran out a side door and down an alley wearing a hospital gown at his clinic. I was in a panic and scared. He sat me down and heard me out. Then he gave me the phone number for the adoption lawyer. He was so kind. Edit. The third part relates to this comment elsewhere in this thread. At the airport, I walk up as the elevator door is closing, and there is a woman inside with a stroller. I slowed down because I wasn't in a hurry and would rather catch the next one. Then I saw a little girl about 2 or 3 is playing in a flower pot thing nearby. I realized she was likely meant to be on the elevator with her mom. but the doors are closed by the time I put it together. I walk up to her and said, "Did your mommy get in the elevator?" She just shyly smiles. I sit down with her and decide to wait in place for a few minimums for the mom to realize. A minute or two later, a man walks up and says, "Excuse me, can I have child?" in a thick Russian Y accent. I was trying to decide what to ask to figure out if she was his kid when the elevator door reopened and the woman came flying out yelling for the girl. She hops up happily and runs over to the mom. I stared at guy with an accusing look, then he turned and got in the elevator too. IDK, what the heck was going on there? Was he with them? Did he think I was trying to take their kid? Was he a creeper following them? So awkward. I literally sat silent through the whole weird encounter. It was my first time voting in a presidential election in 2016. Since becoming old enough to do so, and polling place was at a library. When I get to the front of the line and start filling out the required papers, I mention it's my first time and what to do next. After hearing this, the woman who was working there and helping me raised her voice and said, "Hey everyone, we've got a first time voter here," and started clapping, so they all would clap as well. Nobody clapped, and I was just standing there really embarrassed before quietly saying, "Can I just go vote now?" Similar story, the first time I went to get a pedicure, I went with my mother-in-law. She's a very loud woman who often doesn't understand what she's saying. She kept screaming, "Be gentle with her, she's ATO virgin. She's ATO virgin. Don't pound her. God help me, I will never go back." Edit, we didn't know one another well at the time. And everyone else in the salon was a stranger, but I'm sure they haven't forgotten. Hooked up with a guy in college and fell asleep in his dorm room. I woke up in the middle of the night needing to pee so fucking badly, but unable to find any of my clothes right away. I ended up spending so long trying to find them in the dark that by the time I had enough to wear out in the hall to get to the bathroom, I didn't think I'd make it. He was still sleeping, so I grabbed a big reusable water bottle and squatted over it. It was blissful relief until I looked over and saw his roommate staring at me in horror. When I was a teenager, my friends and I would spend the weekends staying up late playing video games and eating junk food. I was also a cross-country runner, and on this particular night I was experiencing some extreme chafing from a long run earlier that day. While we were at the gas station getting Doritos and energy drinks, I announced to who I thought was my friend, "Man, my nipples really hurt." Upon realizing it was a complete stranger with whom I had just shared this intimate detail, I simply stared at him and said, "You're not my friend," and walked away. I didn't go back to that gas station for a long time. Edit, I'm a guy for those wondering. You're not my friend. Guy hangs head in sorrow. Was at a bar with some friends watching a basketball game, and this guy kept asking me to check out his girlfriend every time she went away. For example, she got up to go outside to smoke. He stayed in, and he was like, "Be honest, is that not the best ass you've ever seen?" He did this several times. I felt so uncomfortable, and there's no nice way of putting it. She wasn't attractive whatsoever to me. I'm glad that guy is happy with her, though. Edit, just addressing a few questions here. I was engaged at the time, which was another reason I didn't try to do anything. I'm Bosnian, but have lived in the States since I was very young, and this happened in Memphis, Tennessee. I know this is a very similar plotline to Shallow Hal, but this actually happened. Unlike Shallow Hal, this woman wasn't really fat, she just looked like someone who had smoked for well over half her life. Posted this before. That time I screamed at a woman over poo. My little village has a small annual dog show. We normally enter our little dog who has one friendliest dog, Waggy's tail, and dog the judge would like to take home in the past. This year she was unfortunately in season, so we didn't enter to prevent any fuss from the other dogs, but took her along to watch. Halfway across the park she decided to poo, and I suddenly realized I'd forgotten a bag. There were loads of other people with dogs around due to the show, so I wandered away a little to ask someone for a bag. I turned back, and to my horror a lady was picking up my little dog's mess. Not wanting to feel like one of those a-holes that doesn't clean up, I ran towards her to advise her she didn't have to do that, because I was going to get it. Instead, in a sort of panic, I waved my arms and barked, "No, that's my poo." Please note that I did not say, "That is my dog's poo." She physically jumped and turned a deep red. She sort of mumbled an apology, dropped the poo, and marched off with her dog. It was at that point that I looked to my left and saw my dog's poo sitting a few feet away from the lady's dog mess that she was attempting to pick up. I think about this at night sometimes.